wanted to do this documentary so people wouldn't have to always stare and take pictures, because we don't like when they take pictures, so they just knew who we are.
The lights of the operating room were nothing new to Abby and Brittany Hensel. After years of rumors and whispered questions about the big surgery, the sisters have emerged into a brand new chapter of their lives. Everyone wants to know, did the doctors finally do it? Did they finally go their separate ways? The truth about their new life is more shocking than any separation could ever be, starting with the operations that changed everything. The road through the operating room. When you first see Abby and Brittany, it's easy to get caught up in how they move, but the real story is what's happening under the hood. Since day one, their lives have been a series of trips to the hospital, not because they were sick, but because their body is basically a high-stakes engineering project. Growing up, they weren't just kids, they were medical celebrities. Every time they went under the knife, the rumor mill went into overdrive. People were always holding their breath, wondering if this was the moment they'd finally be cut apart. But for the Hensels, surgery was never about saying goodbye to each other, it was about making sure they could keep going as a team. The first big drama happened when they were tiny. They were actually born with a third arm growing right between their heads. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it was just a non-functional limb that didn't really do anything. It didn't have the right nerves to move, and honestly, it was just getting in the way of them learning how to balance. So, the doctors stepped in and took it off. That was their first real taste of the operating room. It wasn't about changing who they were. It was just about clearing the path so they could eventually learn to crawl and walk like any other toddlers. As they got older, things got a lot more intense. Imagine having two different spines trying to share one set of hips. By the time they hit 12, their bodies were going through a massive growth spurt, and their spines started to curve like crazy. This was the big one, scoliosis surgery. It wasn't just about looking straight, it was a survival move. If those spines kept curving, they would have eventually crushed their shared lungs and hearts. The surgery to fix it was massive. We're talking about a grueling, hours-long procedure where surgeons had to stabilize everything without messing up the girls' incredible ability to coordinate. It was a scary time, and for a lot of people watching from the outside, this was the big surgery they'd been waiting for. But again, they woke up in the recovery room exactly as they entered it, side by side. There was also this wild period where Abby was growing faster than Brittany. In a shared body, that's a total nightmare for balance. It's like trying to walk when one leg is 3 inches longer than the other. To keep things level, doctors actually had to go in and surgically slow down Abby's growth. It sounds wild to think about, literally hitting the pause button on someone's height, but it worked. It kept them symmetrical enough to keep doing the things they loved, like playing sports and riding bikes. Through all of this, the question of separation was always hanging in the air. Doctors brought it up, of course, but the reality was way darker than the headlines suggested. Because they share so many vital organs, we're talking one set of reproductive organs, one bladder, one intestine. Separating them would have been a gamble with their lives. The odds of both of them surviving were slim to none, and even if they did, their quality of life would have been totally different. They wouldn't be the active, mobile women they are today. Their parents looked at them, two happy, thriving girls who could swim and play ball, and decided that fixing them wasn't worth the risk of losing them. Every time they had a procedure, it was just to keep the engine running. The girls never wanted to be apart. They've said it a million times. They don't know what it's like to be any other way. When one feels a pain, the other usually knows exactly where it is. When one is recovering from a surgery, the other is right there doing the physical therapy with her because she literally has no choice. It's the ultimate buddy system. By the time they reached their late teens and early 20s, the hospital visits started to taper off. Their bodies had finally settled. This is when they really started to reclaim their narrative. They stopped being the conjoined twins in the medical journal and started being the twins who just graduated college. The surgeries they had as kids were the only reason they could even get to that point. Without that back surgery or the growth correction, they probably wouldn't be standing at the front of a classroom teaching fifth graders today. We have to realize that the surgery they're talking about happened years ago. It wasn't one big operation that changed everything. It was a series of small wins that allowed them to stay together. They didn't need a scalpel to give them a new life. They built one themselves by being the most coordinated duo on the planet. They took a medical situation that most people would find impossible and turned it into a career, a marriage, and a pretty normal life in Minnesota. The medical journey was a success, not because it made them two people, but because it made sure they could stay one united front. They moved past the era of being a curiosity and into a life where they're just Abby and Brittany. They proved that being whole doesn't always mean being separate. They're living proof that sometimes the best medical outcome isn't the one that fits the standard mold, but the one that lets you keep the person you've spent every second of your life with. So if they aren't being pulled apart by doctors, how on earth do they manage to navigate a world built for one person while living in a body built for two? Physics of two. It all comes down to a level of teamwork that would make most professional athletes look like amateurs. Think about it. You have two separate brains, two distinct personalities, and two different nervous systems trying to operate one set of limbs. It's like two different pilots trying to fly the same plane at the same time without any radio communication. Abby controls the right side of the body, the right arm and the right leg, while Brittany handles the left. If they aren't perfectly in sync, they aren't just clumsy, they're immobile. But after 30-odd years of practice, they've turned this biological puzzle into a total masterpiece of movement. When they were kids, the simple act of learning to walk was a massive milestone that required months of trial and error. Most babies just have to figure out how to balance their own weight, but the Hensel twins had to figure out how to lean, step, and push off in total harmony. If Abby wanted to go right and Brittany wanted to go left, they'd literally go nowhere. This forced them to develop a kind of silent language where they can anticipate each other's next move before it even happens. It's a level of intuition that goes way beyond what regular identical twins experience. They don't just finish each other's sentences, they finish each other's steps. This coordination gets even crazier when you look at high-skill activities like driving a car. Yes, they have a driver's license. Actually, they had to take the test twice, one for each of them. When they're behind the wheel, it's a choreographed routine. One handles the pedals and the gear shift, while the other takes care of the turn signals and lights. Both have a hand on the steering wheel. To an outsider, it sounds terrifying, but to them, it's just another Tuesday. They've even mastered things like typing on a keyboard, playing the piano, and competing in sports like volleyball and swimming. In the water, their strokes have to be perfectly timed, or they just end up swimming in circles. It's a physical manifestation of the phrase, "two heads are better than one." But the physics of their shared life isn't just about moving, it's about feeling. This is where the biology gets really trippy. While they each have their own sense of touch on their respective sides, there's a middle ground on their shared torso where their sensations overlap. If you scratch Abby's back in a certain spot, Brittany might feel it too. However, they can't feel what's happening on the far side of their sister's body. If Brittany stubs her toe, Abby doesn't feel the physical pain, but she definitely feels the jolt and the frustration. This separation of sensation allows them to maintain a sense of individual identity, even though they are physically tethered. Food and health are another weird balancing act. They have two separate stomachs, which means they can actually have different appetites. Abby might be craving a spicy taco, while Brittany wants a plain salad. They usually eat their own separate meals, though they often share a plate to make things easier. However, because they share a single circulatory system, whatever one sister consumes eventually enters the bloodstream of the other. If Abby drinks a cup of coffee, they both get the caffeine jitters. If Brittany catches a cold, it's only a matter of time before Abby's immune system is fighting it off too. They are, in the most literal sense, in this together, for better or worse. This shared biology also means they have to be incredibly careful with their energy levels. If one twin gets exhausted or sick, the whole system takes a hit. They have to communicate constantly about when to rest, when to eat, and when to push through. It's a 24/7 negotiation that never stops. Imagine having to ask permission from someone else just to get up and grab a glass of water. That is their reality, and they've handled it with a level of grace that most people can't wrap their heads around. The way they handle their new life as adults is a direct result of this physical bond. They've spent their entire lives proving that their shared body isn't a limitation. It's just a different way of existing. They've learned how to dress in a way that reflects both of their styles, often having clothes custom-made with 2 necklines so they can each show off their own personality. Even though they share a pair of legs, they are very much 2 different women with different tastes, different dreams, and different ways of looking at the world. As they moved into their 30s, this physical synergy became the foundation for their professional lives. When they stand at the front of a classroom, they aren't just a medical marvel to their students. They are a living lesson in cooperation. They show kids every single day what it looks like to compromise, to listen, and to work as a team. They don't just talk about teamwork, they embody it. The physics of their 2-person body has essentially turned them into the ultimate teaching tool for empathy and resilience. Abby and Brittany are a reminder that connection is a powerful thing in a world that is obsessed with individualism and personal space. Their dynamic isn't just a result of a surgery that didn't happen. It's a result of a choice they make every single day to stay in sync. They've turned a complex biological situation into a streamlined, functional, and happy life. They aren't 2 halves of a person. They are 2 whole people who have mastered the art of sharing a single journey. While mastering the mechanics of a shared body is one thing, navigating the world of dating and I-dos brings a whole new meaning to the phrase, "three's a crowd." I do or we do. When Abby Hensel tied the knot with Josh Bowling in 2021, she didn't just walk down the aisle, she dragged a decades-long legal and social debate with her. For years, people had been wondering if the girls would ever find love, and the news that Abby was officially a Mrs. sent the internet into a total tailspin. But because Abby and Brittany are legally 2 separate people sharing one body, their marriage is anything but traditional. On paper, the marriage license only has 2 names, Abby and Josh. Legally, Brittany is a third party, but in reality, there's no such thing as a private moment for this couple. Josh, an Army veteran and nurse, didn't just marry a woman. He committed to a life where his wife's sister is present for every dinner, every movie night, and every conversation. It takes a very specific kind of guy to navigate that, and by all accounts, Josh fits the bill perfectly. He's been seen in photos and videos dancing with both sisters, blending into their world with a level of comfort that makes the whole situation feel remarkably normal. Of course, the "how does it work" questions are endless. People want to know about everything from legal rights to the bedroom, while the twins keep their private life very close to the vest. They've always been clear that they are 2 distinct souls. Brittany isn't married to Josh, but she is his sister-in-law in the most literal sense possible. They've had to establish rock-solid boundaries to make sure both sisters feel respected. It's a 24/7 exercise in consent and communication. If Brittany isn't feeling a certain movie or a specific outing, the group has to compromise. They've spent their whole lives harmonizing, so adding a husband to the mix was just the next level of the game. The legal side is just as fascinating. In the eyes of the law, they have separate Social Security numbers and separate voting rights. so only one can be the legal spouse to avoid bigamy laws. But then there's the question of the future. The twins have mentioned in past interviews that they'd love to be moms one day. Since they share a single reproductive system, a pregnancy would physically belong to both of them, even if only one is the legal wife. It's the kind of scenario that keeps lawyers and ethicists up at night, but for the Hensels, it's just life. Abby's marriage is a massive middle finger to anyone who thought their condition would keep them from a normal adulthood. They've proven that love doesn't have to look like a Hallmark movie to be real. Their new life with Josh isn't about separation, it's about expansion. They took a world that told them they'd always be half of something and found a partner who sees them as two whole, incredible women. Building a home together is one thing, but stepping out of the house and into a classroom full of curious 10-year-olds is where their united front truly meets the real world. Splitting paychecks. When they aren't navigating the complexities of marriage or medical history, Abby and Brittany are doing something perhaps even more impressive. They are shaping the minds of the next generation. As fifth-grade teachers in their home state of Minnesota, the twins have turned what could have been a lifetime of being the spectacle into a career based on authority and education. It's a job that requires them to be on for 8 hours a day, managing a room full of energetic kids who by nature have a lot of questions. In the classroom, the dynamic is fascinating. Legally and professionally, they are two separate teachers. They each have their own teaching license, which required them to pass the same rigorous exams and student teaching requirements as any other educator. However, since they occupy one physical space and teach one class, they share a single salary. Most people would find that arrangement frustrating, but for them, it's just the cost of doing business as a duo. They bring two perspectives to the table. Abby might be explaining a math problem, while Brittany is keeping an eye on a student in the back row who is getting distracted. They literally have eyes in the back of each other's heads. Their presence in the school system is the ultimate teachable moment. Kids are naturally curious, and rather than shying away from it, the sisters use their situation to teach lessons that aren't in any textbook. They show their students that being different isn't something to fear or fix. They demonstrate every single day what it looks like to compromise, to listen, and to function as a team even when you disagree. They've managed to move past the medical curiosity label and earn the respect of their peers and parents simply by being great at their jobs. This brings us to what new actually means for Abby and Brittany. For decades, the public has been waiting for a surgery to give them a new life by making them separate, but they've found something much more profound. Their new life isn't defined by a doctor's scalpel or a separation of skin. It's defined by their growth as individuals who are comfortable in their shared skin. They have reclaimed the narrative from the clickbait headlines and the medical journals. Between the marriage, the career, and the quiet life in their community, they have proven that you don't need to be two separate entities to lead a full, beautiful, and independent life. They aren't waiting for a cure for their condition because, as far as they're concerned, there's nothing to fix. The two are exactly who they were meant to be, a united front, facing the world together, one step at a time. Do you follow their journey too? Comment down below and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating content like this.